One thing that can define a games console is its joypad. Now, these days things are pretty set in stone with the offerings from Microsoft or Sony. But if you go back to the 90s, it was more a free-for-all, and this was the offering from Commodore. The infamous CD32 joypad, often labelled as one of the worst controllers ever. I can't really agree with that because, well, I rather like this thing. Granted, it's a bit flimsy, the D-pad's a bit weak, and the buttons are a bit mushy. But the CD32 was my console of choice back then, and yeah, I just grew to love this. In the last few years though, we have another controller in the Amiga scene. That is this one. The A500 controller. This came along with the A500 Mini and is obviously based on this old one. Granted, it's a bit more compact. The layout of the buttons here is more in the style of what you would have found on the SNES. But aside from that, it does feel a lot more sturdy. And the buttons, it all just feels a lot more modern. Speaking of which, it comes with a USB port on the end of it. Now, that's fine for your A500 Mini console, or I suppose you could plug this into a computer and play Steam games on it. But I want to plug this into my CD32 and use it as an actual CD32 controller. Now, I suppose we could build some external box of tricks to do the communication between USB and DB9. But rather than doing that, I decided to create this little PCB. This will replace the board that's in there, and this is a CD32 joypad. So this PCB, this is based on the Commodore schematics for that thing. So I hope I got it right. Haven't tested this yet, but it's a 74LS165 and a 125 plus one electrolytic capacitor on the top side there. And yes, I had to stick a pile of components on the bottom side. Just more resistors and capacitors, a couple of resistor packs, 10k pull-ups. And yeah, I know most joypad PCBs are just single-sided. I just couldn't get it all to work on a single side, so I stuck those components on the back to keep everything as small as possible. And yeah, I know I said I would never work with it again, but this is all 0402 components. There isn't a lot to it, so hopefully it goes together without too many problems. But let's get into it and let's get it done. So we'll crack this thing open first of all. 5 screws on the bottom. And then there are clips in this case, just there and there. Yeah, you can just about get a screwdriver into that seam. Just run it along until you find the clip, and then that's it off. There's a weight in here, just to give a bit of weight to this pad. And then there's the PCB itself. So you just lift out. The gamepad, copyright 2021, Retro Games Limited. And there it is. All rubber domes, as I said. And in fact, what we'll do is just put all that to the side for now. And I want to take these buttons out of this, just so I can show you that this fits, or well, at least it more or less fits. Now you can see when designing the new PCB, I had to steal a little bit because I needed a bit more space. There's a large cutout here on the original where the 4 wires to the USB port, or the 4 wires come up through to connect to this. I needed a bit more space for the 2 ICs, so I have taken a bit of that cutout just to mount those. But it all does still fit, even if it is maybe just a little bit tight on those tabs there, so it might just want a slight adjustment. I think those 2 holes just need pulled together ever so slightly. As I said, I haven't built one of these yet, so the PCBs will just need a little bit of a tweak. But as you can see, hopefully through all those holes there, everything does more or less line up. The only thing there that might want a slight adjustment is the X and B button, the pads for those, are maybe spaced out just a little bit too much. They might want pulled in a millimeter on either side, maybe 2mm for X. But I still think it'll work okay. The way this works, obviously, is that just sits on top of it, and the carbon contacts on the bottom of that, they just press against this exposed copper, completing the circuit. Now, you might have noticed that this controller, this actually has one extra button compared to the original CD32 controller. This just has the one start or pause button, whereas this thing has a home and menu button. What I have done on this PCB is just combine those, so either of those buttons will act as start pause. And I know what you're thinking, you could have just used an Arduino or something external to do exactly the same. There's no need to go to all this hassle. Well, yeah, that's true. Although, to be honest, I don't really know what I'm doing in terms of Arduino code, whereas I can follow a schematic, and this is just a smaller part of a larger project that I have in the works. You could almost call this a test of concept. So I think that's enough waffling on my part. Let's put this together. So I'm just going to use hot air for this, and I think we'll start on the back side. Get all the small stuff done first. Let's do the two resistor networks, RP1 and RP2. I'm not sure why I labelled them RP. RN would have been more appropriate, wouldn't it? Resistor network. And just a bit of solder paste. Far too much solder paste. I do find if you haven't used this for a while, it sort of comes out a bit clumpy to start with. I have no idea if this is going to work or if that's just going to make a mess. Let's just try it. RP was probably resistor pack, that's what I was thinking. Although resistor network, RN, I suppose would also work. Come on. Has that worked? Well, it has created a terrible blob of solder on the sides of those components, so let's just get a bit of flux on it and let's try and reflow it. It's all going to plan today, isn't it? My soldering iron has just fell apart. I need a new one of these. The threads on that are stripped. Okay, take two. Let's try and do it properly this time. So, bit of solder paste. And just the tiniest bit, because we already have solder on those pods. Resistor pack. And resistor pack. And hot air. How about we bring in a bit of magnification? And yeah, that is just a mess. Probably should have just got JLC to do this. Almost there. Yeah, I think that's okay now on that side. That side of it is all 5 volts, so I suppose it doesn't really matter if it's bridged there. And it moves it. Tell me you haven't done any fine pitch soldering for a couple of months without telling me you haven't done any fine pitch soldering for a couple of months. No, I don't think that's too bad. And yeah, I think that's that one sorted as well. We'll just do all the other resistors. So R1, that is a 220 ohm. R10 beside it then, that is a 1K. Then it's R11, which is a 10K. Then R15, which is 100 ohm. And then lastly R16, which is 4.7K. Just capacitors then. C1, which is 100 PF, or picofarad. And C3, which is 1000 picofarad. C4 and C5, they are both decoupling caps, just the usual 0.1 microfarad, 100 nanofarad. I tipped two out, I could only see one, tipped out another one, and then the other one appeared. How did that happen? Doesn't matter. I bought loads of them, and they're only pennies each. And then the last component on the bottom side is a ferrite bead, and you'll never guess what I forgot to order. Although I think I have just found one on a scrap Pentium 4 board, and I'm 99% sure it's a ferrite bead because it's labelled on that board as FB2. So you know, what else is it going to be? So yeah, I think that'll work. Just this side to do. The two ICs and the other capacitor C2, which is an electrolytic. It is 47 microfarad. Now rather than go for a surface mount electrolytic here, I have stuck with the through hole, just so I can use something really small and we can bend it over flat against the board. Something like that. Although I'm probably better doing those two ICs first of all. So take that back out. This is the 125. I think I'll just do this by hand. Don't need solder paste for this. Yeah, that's a complete mess. I'll tidy it up in a minute though. Let's just do this side. And then the other side. Then it's just the 165 and that capacitor. More or less it. Now we do need a couple of switches. I couldn't actually find these switches on Mouser. I'm sure they're there somewhere. I'm just not sure exactly what they're called. Well, I'm not sure what the footprint of them is. So what I'll do is just desolder those two and we'll stick them in there. We need a wire, which obviously is going to connect there, pins 1 through 9, and then we can test it. There's the two buttons fitted, and we now have a wire. Just a black wire for now, it's all I had spare. Although I will try and source a white wire or a beige wire or something that's a bit of a better match to this case. Pull the 1200 out to test with. Yes, I know this is a CD32 pad, but it'll work with any Amiga, and it's just handier to test on the 1200 to run the little test suite from within Workbench. Before we do that though, let's just go for another test fit. So I think the idea will be that my wire will probably have to run up through that strain relief and then out that way. I hope we have enough space in the back of the case to accommodate that. Yeah, that's going to go together okay. It is a little bit tight there. That wire is obviously quite a bit thicker than the one that came out of it. The one that came out of it only had 4 cores, this one's got 9. So that's always going to be the case, but I think it will work okay. But the one thing that I am keen to test is these two shoulder buttons. Are they going to work? Well, that one is working fine, but that one's not. I think this one is going to be really hard to see on camera, but there's just the tiniest gap there. I think that needs to move out that way by 0.5 millimeter, maybe even less. So yeah, there will be a slight revision required. For now though, I think I could just put a bit of tape or something on the back of this just to take up that extra little bit of space. But I'm keen to test it. I'm keen to know what it's doing. So I'll take it back out of this case for now. Let's get it plugged into the 1200 and let's test it. So we're in Workbench here, and the tool that we're going to use to test this, I've got it in here. It is just Joyport Test. Found this on Amigas. It's just a little Workbench utility. I can test a mouse, a joystick, or the CD32 joypad plugged into either port. You can see there, port 0, we currently have a mouse connected. There's the button presses, and there's the movement of it. So let's test it. I'm just going to use one of these little carbon contacts from the joypad. Let's do the D-pad first. That's working. Left, up, right, down. The pause button is not working. Pause play button. Fire, that's working. But that's it. So yeah, the fact that it's saying joystick there, it thinks that this is a joystick. It doesn't realize that we have a CD32 pad. Let me grab my own controller. This one, let me just plug this in quickly. So this D-pad still working. And there's all the buttons working. Yeah. That is working fine. Why is this one not working? What happens if we turn off this checkbox here? Low level. Turn that off. Well, that didn't change anything there. It's obviously just changing how it's reading the joystick. Oh no, hold on a second here. It's nice saying there, controller type joypad. I didn't notice that before. When did that change to joypad? Because that definitely said joystick a second ago. Let's plug the other one back in. In fact, with nothing in, okay, it says controller type joystick. If I plug this one in now, it says controller type joypad. I'm fairly sure that said joystick a second ago. Left, up, right, down, pause. Ah, there's that working now. Then red, blue, yellow, green, and the two shoulder buttons. Yeah, that is now working fine. The difference seems to be this in how the Amiga is reading the joypad. I mean, that's still working there now. If I disconnect it, it now says NA, and reconnect it, it now says joystick, so it thinks this is a joystick again. So yeah, something weird happening. I think we need to get it so that it's working exactly the same as this. Obviously, there must be two different means of reading the input from the joypad. I'm not sure what the difference is there with that low level selected or not. But with the original pad here, it works perfectly regardless of which way that is set. So what's the difference between these two? Because I think I followed the Commodore schematics when designing this. Let me go and do a bit of homework. Right, I might be onto something here. So as I said, this was designed using the Amiga schematics or the Commodore schematics. And to get those, I just went to Google and searched for CD32 joypad schematic. Now over on the Amiga wiki, there are two versions of it, R3 or R4. That's just for the differences in the CD32 itself, just for the different revisions. But if we go right to the bottom of this document, there is the joypad schematic, and it is exactly the same between the two versions. One thing that I have noticed is different though, if we go back to Google, well, there's not only those two schematics, there are a couple of other schematics that people have put together themselves, reverse engineered them, you might say. And over on this site, mrdictionary.net. And granted, for whatever reason this evening, that link to that schematic doesn't seem to be working properly. But we can just about make out here, those are the pins or the wires going, to this. And if we go down to number 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is how the Amiga sets the pod as a CD32 joypad. And we can see there that that is just straight through connected to pin 1 of the 125. Now, if we go back to the proper schematics, the Commodore schematics, there is pod 5, or wire number 5. That is connected to pin 1 of the 125, but on this schematic there is also a 4.7K pull-up. And that is exactly how I have designed this as R16. And so that one, that is the 4.7K pull-up. So it's on the Commodore schematics, it's on my board, but it's not on that schematic, which someone has drew up by taking their pod apart. I think that's what we should do next. Let's take this apart. Let's see if this has that pull-up resistor. That's the ferrite bead in this one, and it looks like the bit of hot glue there holding it has snapped off, so I'll have to fix that. And yes, this is the one that I previously modified with tactile switches to replace all the rubber domes, just to try and give it a slightly better feel. Now, P5 is the green wire there, which is that one. A trace coming down there underneath this tape, which is running to the ferrite bead. Obviously an afterthought. You can see these wires have been put in through 2 holes that have been drilled in the PCB there to mount the bead on the other side. And you can actually see there where the PCB has been cut by hand to separate that trace. But anyway, the one we're interested in from pin 5, come down here underneath that and straight to pin 1 on that 125. There is no pull-up resistor. It looks like there's a solder blob here, but that's only present on this side of the board. There's nothing there. So yeah, there is no pull-up. Just while I'm putting this one back together though, let's just fix that bit of hot glue. Get that ferrite bead secured again. You can do that just with the hot air gun. Just turned right down, 100 degrees. That'll be enough to melt that. Hopefully not melt me in the process. And it's getting kind of hot. Yeah, that glue's molten again. I'll just hold it there for a second and then that'll be that secured. It's janky enough as it is without that rattling around. On this then, let's remove R16. And let's bring in 1200 again and test it. Okay, so back in Workbench, and it seems to have picked it up straight away there. Joypad. Let's put it to the test. So up, down, left, right, that's all fine. The 2 start buttons, they're fine. Red, blue, yellow, green. Let's just turn off that low level thing, whatever it does. And let's try it again. Up, down, left, right, start, start. Blue or red, blue, green, yellow. Didn't test the shoulder buttons, did I? Yeah, that is fine. Just try swapping it out. So we disconnect it there, controller NA, nothing's connected. Plug it in, joypad. Yeah, that is now working properly. So R16 is not required. So all back together. It is a bit of a tight squeeze there, just where that wire comes through. So I will have to try and find a slightly thinner cable, or maybe I should just take more of the sheath off it. I need to find a different colored one anyway, so that will be revisited. But the most important thing, does it work? Yes, works perfectly. And in fact, that right shoulder button, remember where I said I thought I needed to move the button out slightly? I did put a little shim in there, just a little bit of paper, try and take up that like 0.5 millimeter. And with that in place, once it was together, I couldn't move this button. So that's back out. Everything is just as it was, and both of those buttons are working fine. Everything is working perfectly. So just one last thing to do. Let's get this 1200 out of the way. We'll get the CD32 over here, because there's only one game that I know that actually uses all of these. That game, of course, has to be Guardian. Now this game runs silky smooth on my CD32 here because of the TF330 in it. Now we could run it from the CF card, we could have actually run this on the 1200 from its hard drive, but we wouldn't have got the epic CD audio music. For me, that's just what makes this game on the CD32. I think this is the best version of it because of that audio. So press start, either of these, and yeah, that seems to be working. Let's go into the game. So move forward, move backwards, we can shoot, we can do a flip, we can use a bomb. I don't actually know what blue does in this game. Maybe blue doesn't do anything in this game. But the object of it, as I'm sure you know, is to fly around this open world, killing these weird looking things, wherever they've gone, those things. You need to clear 2 sets of them. There's 2 more to get in this set. You can't pick up those power-ups. What does that one do? Ah, I've missed it. Ah, that's what the blue button does. Those yellow power-ups are a missile, and the blue button launches the missile. There is the next set of those things, so we'll destroy all of them, and then that will be the level complete. I am being lazy there using my bombs. I don't really need to use them in this first level. It isn't too hard. But this game does get very, very hard very, very quickly. There we are. Zone 1.1 cleared. And it does play really well with this little pad. The only thing that takes a little bit of getting used to is the position of these buttons. Because if we compare it to the standard pad, which I am very used to, you know, that's like that. They're in a diamond formation there, they're more like a square formation there. So I can see me hitting the wrong button occasionally. A very minor niggle, I suppose. Won't take long to get used to it. And this thing overall does feel better in your hands compared to this one. The input is just a little bit twitchy though, just with a D-pad. There's the tracking missile, and yeah, blue launches it. But there's little we can do about that really. That's just the nature of the beast. With D-pads, we're all just used to analog sticks these days, where you get a full range of motion. These things are just sort of on or off. And I'm dead again. Well, I must say I'm very happy with how this has come together. We now have a brand new CD32 pad in this A500 GAMEPAD shell. Not that I'm going to be doing away with my beloved original pads anytime soon, but just having this will stop the wear and tear on this thing. And I suppose you have to be honest and say that this just does fit the hand slightly better. It just feels better to play with. I've also ordered a cream coloured cable just to replace this black one. Wound up getting a 3 meter male to male serial cable. So yeah, it's got to have a bigger end on it. I can't find any pre-formed cream coloured cables like this. But it'll do fine. I mean, it'll still fit in the side of the console or the back of the computer. And the reason I went for that cable is so I can cut it in half. Half of it go in here, and the other half, well, I do have another one of these. I could be very tempted to use another one of the PCBs I have and build up this pad as well. Speaking of which, that would leave another 3 PCBs. So if anybody wants one to have a go at doing this themselves, just drop me a message and I'll send it on to you. Speaking of which, I have went ahead and edited the schematic and the PCB layout. Just with those couple of wee changes, removed R16, modified the position of the contacts inside for the green and blue buttons, and modified the position of some of the wee holes around the mounting tabs, just so that it all fits a bit better. And if anybody wants those, if you look down in this video's description, you'll find a zip file with all the KiCad project files, along with the Gerbers, and a pick and place file as well. Plus bill of materials, so you can get JLC or your chosen PCB manufacturer to do all the small stuff for you. But yeah, that's going to be it. Let me know what you think about this little project. Is it something that you'd like to do to your A500 GAMEPAD? And it absolutely goes without saying that if you do this modification, you void any warranty associated with these original controllers. But yeah, let me know what you think. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.